Do something, find something that is passionate for you. Start doing it similarly as you would with any social media. Consistency. Go out there, start recording the first podcast, even though it may not be the best one, and just kind of grow from there. Listen to what your audience is telling you, what they would like to listen to more, and then kind of build content around that.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Leadership Stack Podcast, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs to increase your leadership, teamwork, and profits. This is your host, Sean C., aka Mr. CEO at 22.
Keep your competitors close, but don't emulate them, because what then end up, you're just going to, copying what they're doing, and then you're not really finding your own niche. Sometimes it's easy to copy them very quickly because it helps give you sort of a good platform to run off of and basically set your structure. But then later on, you realize that customers don't really want what your competitors are already offering. And you end up having to sort of, manipulate the way you look at your platform and decide, is that the same route that you want to go with?
And this is the dream of all entrepreneurs and HR personnel, right? To hire the right people, independent, working on their own. You don't need to micromanage them. How do you get those people?
Great question. It's a really good question. So I've been very bad at hiring, very slow. It's for a reason. Because when you have actually a team, the most important is the balance of a culture. And every person that you bring onto the team changes that culture in one way or another. Regardless of whether you want it, no one person is exactly alike. So every person that you add to it is going to be very different. But what has happened also throughout the course of hiring and interviewing and putting people in, and then, having some of them leave and then looking at that, either most actually all the people that we have left so far is voluntary, because they come on board, they have something that happened in their family and they needed to go away. And then, it just didn't work anymore. And we just look for a new replacement. But when we're hiring, we take a very slow approach. For better or worse, it's not ideal. But most corporate is just trying to feel just like a worker in that role. We're not. We're actually looking for a really strong teammate. So we actually go through a very transparent interview process. It goes through an interview with me, with all of my team members, and then each one of them actually, it's a technical task. Maybe they will be driven to actually do something on a code base. They'll be asked to talk about how they would code. If it's content writing, they'll be asked to task to write on a couple of things. And then we weigh and measure, and then we discuss continuously at every single level. I think that type of transparency allowed us to make sure that, one, we hire really good teammates that add to the entire team. Second, we're looking at someone that is not just looking at it as a job, beyond a job. I think, and then third thing I think is most important is when they're actually in a job, we realize that some people actually perform better in some roles than what was originally advertised. And you need to give them that opportunity to actually look at that. And I think that role is dependent on the actual hiring manager. I'm always evaluating the team. I'm always looking at getting them to do what they are most best in. And sometimes they're at a sacrifice. Like there are probably 10 tasks. I know 2 of the tasks is necessary, but it's not great for the skill sets of this person. And, it make that decision. So we have a great developer, for instance, who actually loves code. And when you have actually someone like that who actually loves writing code, you don't want them to play with things like WordPress or CSS or doing something different. And you want them to focus on writing the code because that's really tough. So you need to continuously weigh that. Do I have enough on the non-code base to hire someone to complement this person so that I keep them focused on doing, one, what they love, and second thing, doing what they're really good at. And I think that's always an evaluation process. I think big corporate environments often forget that it's actually each individual. That measurement, that sort of alignment doesn't happen on a regular basis. But in a startup, I think if we decide to keep the team small, that's something that we can always do on a regular basis. And that makes it much better.
When you say that you evaluate them regularly, how often do you evaluate them and how does it look like? Is there a Google sheet, a piece of paper that you go through, set of questions that you go through? How does it look like?
So we don't evaluate like that. We do it on a daily basis. So if you're a developer, you will have tasks every morning, no changes every day, 9 a.m. my time. We always get onto a call. That call would be anywhere from 10 minutes to 20 minutes, an ideation of what will be completed today, task driven. And then at the end of the day, what's been done. And it has gone on for like this for 18 months. And we're actually outperforming a lot of the metrics that I've seen, even as a CMO in the past, like literally tasks was being cleared out. So we do that on a regular basis. It gives you an idea of how many. And once you actually have that, you kind of know what is difficult when someone is not delivering on par to what they could have done. You go into a conversation like, what was the problem at the end of the day? Like, why didn't this get completed? Why didn't this get completed? Was it because it was just a more difficult task? And then you also have monthly planning, which then kind of, okay, these are all the things that we want to do within this month. We need to map it out. But because it is a roadmap that's often mapped out in the 1 month ahead, then we'll know how much time to dedicate on it. And then with every one of my team, I do a 2 weekly. So every 2 weeks, I would do one sort of session with them, which is a 1-to-1. And then at the end of the month, another 1-to-1, just to kind of get, not just the job side, but just talk about their aspiration, their life situation. Because you have to remember, they're probably, going through marriage, having their first child, or going through something in their life that's other than themselves being at work. So those are the time that you talk about, how things are going. If their mom or parents are not feeling well, have they gotten better? Have situation in their home changed? Are they, do they see that changing in the next couple of months? So you kind of use that as sensors along the way, and you always know where your team is at all times. But again, like I said, that's probably doable when you're a much smaller company like us. But when you get to a bigger company, that is something that you have to process the size.
That's leadership. That is something that I think a lot of startup founders miss. They're like, I hired you, you have to be mature, I'm paying you, it's not my job to babysit you, so go do whatever it is I'm paying you for, right? And they don't meet, they don't talk. It's a lot of people miss that out. I have to admit, I missed that out a lot of years as CEO, and I've been doing this a decade now. So that is something that is super important. I hope you guys listening in here did not miss that. Spend time with your team, do one-on-ones. Jaime does it 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day at the start of the day, at the end of the day. That is perfect. There might be people listening in who are thinking of starting their own podcasts. And I'm interested in knowing how it works. I haven't dove deeply into Matchcasts yet. So what is it about? How does it work? How will it serve podcasters here in Asia?
So that's two sides to that question. So let's talk about, if you're an aspiring podcaster, what really you want to do. So the way I look at podcasting is no different from you making a decision saying that, hey, I want to be a social media influencer. The journey is actually the same. I always liken it to be the same because social media influencers actually influencing their followers through different platforms, either through pictures like Instagram or Facebook, through their views and comments, or through video and any other way. Podcasting is the same way. It's only through audio. That's the difference. The way I look at it is I very much like the same thing that you're doing, right? Sean, you said that you want to add value to people. You want to share a certain perspective. And I think that is the best way to start thinking about podcasting. You really should start podcasting in some way, saying that, it can come from any direction. I've had people who told me that, hey, I just want to use podcasting as a way to interview people with all kinds of strange jobs that I would never get exposed to. It'll be a bit like, a bit voyeurism for me to understand what they do when I would never have the opportunity to do something like that. And people start podcasts interviewing people with odd jobs, with really strange jobs. And that could be really exciting. It could be people who just want to tell a story. A podcaster that we work with who is very talented, he said, look, Jaime, I want to build the Blumhouse. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Blumhouse. Blumhouse of Asia. So Blumhouse is started by Jason Blum, who actually does all those horror flicks from Hollywood. So if you remember things, I can remember, but like Final Destination, Saw, The Conjuring. So these shows, they're very, very popular. And he wanted to create the Blumhouse of podcasting. So he basically wanted to tell horror stories, which is great because he's a filmmaker himself and he wants to bring that into the podcasting world. And there are many entrepreneurs like yourself who said, look, I want to share, what entrepreneurship means to people. and I want to share that through a podcast. It enables me to meet, other people that in my field that I might not have the opportunity to meet if I didn't have a podcast. And they use that. So it could be any reason, but the idea is do something, find something that is passionate for you. Start doing it similarly as you would with any social media. Consistency. Go out there, start recording the first podcast, even though it may not be the best one, and just kind of grow from there. Listen to what your audience is telling you, what they would like to listen to more, and then kind of build content around that. Reach out to people that otherwise you would not have been able or have a reason to reach out to if you didn't have a podcast, and go to them and say, hey, I would love to have you on the show and talk about your, what you're doing. I think those are the best way. And I think given where the landscape is, there's so many opportunities. There are free hosting platforms that you could get on board. There are free tools that you could use to actually do the recording. You might not have to to buy a $900 podcast mic. You can just get a USB mic and just be able to do the same thing. There are also services that help you. There are courses that people teach, that tells you how to actually create your own podcast. And when you're ready for advertising, join. Once your podcast is on, or before that, and you really want to produce this really great content, join Matchcast, sign yourself up, and potentially get matched with brands to advertise onto your platform. The way it goes is you never shouldn't start too late. With a lot of social media influencers, I think they're all very smart now. If they're going to do something, they would go out and then start evaluating the market with brands and all of that. Podcasts, I think they need to produce the content before they go out. But sometimes you don't need to do that. You actually need to go out and find where potentially the market is if you want to make this potential livelihood. So there are many, many ways to do it. And I think starting with a niche and then start doing it and then do it consistently is probably the best advice for any podcaster.
That is also going to be my same advice. Just do it consistently. Make sure you keep doing it. You keep providing value. And it's funny, but one of the things that I have been given as advice by another podcaster that I listen to, and also for me, it's the same advice I'm going to give anyone who wants to start, is don't do it for the money. Do it for a calling. Because if you do it for the money, the first 2 to 3 years, there's going to be no money and you're going to be discouraged. It's tough. It's tough. I haven't been monetizing this podcast at all. I don't have advertisers. It's been a year and a half almost. But I'm loving it. I'm learning so much. I'm meeting new people. I have been able to help people. I don't know them, but they have been reaching out and telling me that they watch my shows, listen to the podcast, and they have gotten tremendous value. And for me, that is payment enough. If I get money out of it, that's icing on the cake. And by the way, the first recording is always the worst recording. Always, always. So just go ahead and do it. Don't worry about it.
Investing in the stock market, in mutual funds, or even in crypto, these are investments that give you capital appreciation. So they just grow your money. But when you reach your retirement and you stop your cash flow, you stop working, your expenses would need to be addressed. And having a source of income, not just your pension, but other sources of income would really help.